Good evening. Ron Mata, your affable host, hosting our 7th journey into the great unknown of Worcester. And glad you could join us. We've had a lot of fun with the show and continue to have fun. And it's all predicated on the guests. And tonight is absolutely in keeping with what you've seen for the first 6, with one difference. The individual who is our special guest today is running for office. And he'll be sharing with you his thoughts as to why he's getting involved at this level. He wants to activate Worcester, and you'll understand why very, very shortly. And to move the process along, our special guest host tonight, all the way from Worcester, right off Shrewsbury Street, is my friend Sandy Williamson. How are you tonight?
Pretty good, Ron.
Good.
Thanks.
Glad to have you back. Glad to have you back.
Yeah. Well, we're in and out, and I didn't want you guys to have all the fun by yourself.
Oh, well,
so
we kind of bounce around with basically 3 co-hosts. And in point of fact, the man who's playing the Wizard of Oz tonight is our friend Chris Pinto, who's the man behind the curtain. And if you don't like any of the shots that you see, blame Chris if you see him in the street, that's for sure. But anyway, who's our guest tonight?
Our guest tonight is Bill McCarthy, originally from Worcester, and Bill and his family he has his wife Deborah and his 3 kids that are here with him, and he's an educator. He's a community volunteer in many different areas. He teaches criminal justice at Quinsigamon, Becker, and at Assumption, former state trooper, and now he's running for office here in the 14th District. So,
where is this 14th District, Bill?
Well, first of all, hello everyone. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us.
It's
Happy to have you here.
Really nice. The 14th Worcester District is the northern part of Worcester. Wards 1, part of Wards 1, all of Ward 2, and parts of Ward 3, and the town of West Boylston. It's North Worcester, Indian Lake, West Boylston Street, Greendale, Burncoat Street, some on Lincoln Street too. So it's a good area. A lot of good families there, some businesses that are struggling, and they're out there.
Why would somebody with all the different things you have going on at the same time, what would make you want to run for office?
Well, there's 3 main reasons why I'm running for office. First of all, it's the economy. The economy is horrible right now. We need jobs in our area. We need people to help create jobs, and it's very important that we work with the small business owners. Small business owners are the ones who are the lifeblood for the state of Massachusetts. We don't make anything here anymore. We used to have a number of manufacturing companies. Now it's the small businesses. The small businesses need an advocate. I can fulfill that role as an advocate for the small businesses. They need to have people, and as I meet with the different business owners, they tell me that they need to have somebody who can tell the folks down at Beacon Hill that no more taxes. Enough with this overregulation. Allow them to expand their businesses. Quit trying to hold them down. And they're fearful that there will be more taxes. That's the first reason. The second reason is, as you probably know, since we are in tough economic times, there are people out there who need some, they call it the EBT, the electronic benefit transfer. There are people who need those services. However, there are a number of folks who are out there abusing it. And we've heard it in the news. We've heard about people getting manicures, buying lottery tickets. Those are the taxpayer dollars. We can't have that. We need to have somebody in there representing the taxpayers, the voters, who will be a good steward of the taxpayers' money. And those are the 2 main things that I'm running on. And the third one is it's important to have somebody who can provide some transparency to the community. I want to work with the members of the community, the homeowners, the taxpayers, the business owners, the folks out there who really need some help, and that they want the government to help them, not just tax them.
How do you propose to make that third part happen? In other words, the transparency issue. How will you get feedback from your people?
Well,
of which I'm one.
Yes.
I happen to live in, hopefully, your district. So
yes.
How would I get back to you?
Well, websites, phone calls. A lot of times what happens today is that people are busy. They're tied up with things. They only get people don't get their news the way that we used to with the networks. They get their news, it's 24/7. So they may get their news from the internet, cable news, speaking to people, something on the radio. And I believe it's very important that the people who represent us get feedback from the people on a regular basis, not only just to see them at election time, but also throughout the year. And that can be done through newsletters, it can be done through websites, Facebook, a lot of that social media. It's critical that the taxpayers have open communications with their representatives.
One of the points you made just now is so accurate, where every 2 years, it's like the gestation period. Every 2 years, right around Labor Day, bam, everybody suddenly is out there grinning and smiling and holding up placards and knocking on doors. Then comes the first week of November, typically the first Tuesday of November, and that's all you hear from them for roughly another 18 or 19 months until it's time to go through the re-election cycle again. And I know personally that's something that disturbs me and always has disturbed me. I know the incumbent who you're competing with, and I'm living in the area 13 years, and that individual has been, I guess, in the job for, is it 6 years?
Yep, 5, yeah.
I have personally seen him in our area one time, and that's because of the Beatles. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't because of him exclusively. He was one of about 12 politicians who appeared at the Greendale People's Church. And I'm not trying to, throw rocks at anybody, but I am a constituent, and I am paying money for his services or for your services, and to me, visibility is absolutely critical.
It is. There has to be a relationship between the elected representatives and the citizens. You have to have that, so that way, if an issue comes up, they can work together and solve whatever the problem is.
So I take it you've probably been out meeting a lot of your potential constituents.
Yes, I have. I've been out there door knocking since probably right around April, and I've been going through all the different neighborhoods in Worcester and in West Boylston. And what I found in Worcester is that if you travel down West Boylston Street or down Lincoln Street, you find a number of empty businesses. There's a lot of real estate there that if we could only make the area more attractive and make Worcester and Massachusetts make it have a better climate for business owners. I think that's something that we need to work on. Let's sit down with the business owners in the area and ask them, what is it that we can do? I believe that we need some type of economic triage. And when I say that, it's like, okay, we need to stop the bleeding right now. And by doing that, we can solve some of these problems. My PhD is in workforce development and human resource education, and I want to apply the education and the skills that I have the same way that a medical doctor would with a patient. We need to treat the problem and come up with some type of solution and come up with some type of cure.
You may have seen the show a couple weeks ago. We had Brad Wyatt on.
Yes.
The topic for that show was small businesses.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of the points that came out of that show is people think of small businesses being little mom and pops, which, yes, in point of fact, they are. But in this country, not just the state, but in this country, more than half the people that are employed by businesses that are technically small business. In other words, I think that the cutoff is either 49 or 50. I can never remember the exact number. And what's sad is that the kinds of regulations and taxes that small businesses are being hit with, they can't hire people, they're struggling like the devil just to keep the doors open. And probably just as devastating is the fact that people are really reluctant to take a shot and start businesses now.
Right.
You don't have that big influx like you normally do.
Right.
So that whole cycle is being aborted, so to speak.
Right, and that's the assessment that I found by meeting with these business owners, the small business owners, the medium-sized business owners, and we have found that what they want is they want to have somebody there speaking for them so that they can expand. They've been able to sustain their business this long. What they need to do is have somebody advocate for them. The fellow that I'm running against, he wants to go up in the income tax and the gas tax. I mean, these are tough economic times. People can't afford that. As I'm speaking with people doing door-to-door, I have found that people are struggling. They're struggling to make a payment on their mortgage, make a payment for if they rent, if they have children that are going to college. They're struggling to figure out how they're going to pay for that tuition. I mean, those are the things, those are the real issues. Those are the people, that's the middle class. Many times these politicians attack the middle class because they keep paying. They're the ones that are paying. Well, wait a second. Let's freeze things for a while here. Let's stop and say, what can we do to help the middle class? The middle class, they're the ones that are providing this money. I mean, look at the taxes. If gasoline, you're driving a couple of vehicles, alcohol tax, this guy supports going up in the alcohol tax. I mean, the small businesses, they can't afford that.
You know what I find fascinating? When politicians advocate for an increase in taxes, they'll generally give you a warm fuzzy about why we need to do it. Typically, we're going to do it for the children, okay, or for the downtrodden, or this, that, and the other thing, all of which is wonderful to hear. Nice, soothing balm. Unfortunately, you never, ever hear a corresponding cut in other things that we know are just loaded with waste.
Right. And that's what we need to do during these tough economic times. We need to eliminate the waste. We need to eliminate or reduce the fraud so that these people, they're taking our money, that's taxpayer dollars, with the EBT. My opponent voted against reforming that. People are going out there. Last year, there were news reports that showed that over $800,000 was taken out in Florida near Disney World. I mean, people are taking the vacations that we can't afford. They're getting the tattoos, the manicures, they're buying the alcohol. I mean,
it's free money. Why not? It's their money. It's entitled. The whole program was never intended to be a slush fund for people to spend as they saw fit, if you will. Those dollars are there to help them to eat and to sustain their life until they can go forward from that point.
Not these non-essentials. They need food. It needs to be used. And you need somebody who can go in there and say, hey, wait a second, what are you doing here? We need to stop this insanity because the middle class keeps getting hit every day with a new tax or a new proposed tax, and we need to stop that. That's why I'm working on this campaign to try and bring out a voice for the middle class.
So the folks that were not in favor of reasonable controls on the EBT cards, what was their logic? Did anybody, or that debate never takes place on Beacon Hill?
Yeah,
it's
I don't
only
think it does.
Late at night when these things go through and the speaker votes a certain way and everybody just follows him into the abyss.
Right, and that's why we need more balance in the state legislature. We need it here in the state to keep everybody honest. By doing that, then there are more things that are transparent for
So in the case of a voice vote, we don't even know for sure how anyone voted. Is that true?
That happens on a number of occasions too. So now's the time.
If we can, if the state can get a more balance in the legislature, then that would generally require an actual roll call vote, and the votes would be recorded so that the constituents could see how their representatives voted on various things more clearly.
And that's what we need, and that's a perfect segue for us to talk about some of the other transparency issues. For example, let's say that there's a bill that your representative has voted on. Okay, they announce it, they print up the results on Sunday in the newspaper. What do they call it? The roll call, and every Sunday you have that. If people aren't familiar with that, if they don't get the Sunday paper, like I said earlier, society's changed. It's not the same type of life that we were living 20 years ago. If they're not familiar with what their representatives are voting on, then how can they, vote the correct way to get somebody out who's not working for them? It's important for us to have that transparency because there are special interests that are out there that influence these politicians. For example, I had taken a graduate course at Northeastern University, and it was co-taught by some presidential scholar and Michael Dukakis. And when he was...
Not one and the same.
Yes, yes. Former governor, former legislator here in Massachusetts, and he was relaying to us...
And tank commander.
Yes, yes. He was relaying to the class. At one point, he had a bill that he was trying to pass, and he went to one of his colleagues and said, listen, I'd like this bill to pass, and I'd like you to be on it with me. And the guy said, hey, no, I can't do it. I got a lot of support against this bill. And he says, okay. So a couple weeks passed. He comes back, and he says, is there any way we could move on this issue? It's a water bill. It would help your community. He says, no way. He says, I got a lot of folks, you know, that are against this bill. So Dukakis said, he asked the guy, well, what, are you getting a lot of mail, thousands of those postcards? He says, I haven't seen. He says, no, I got 8 handwritten letters or typed letters from my constituents. And Dukakis was saying that was amazing because 8 people were holding up this particular bill, but the legislator who represents those folks saw it as being that important. Transparency, right? We need to know those types of things. Who are these special interests that are influencing our legislators?
I guess the point, which is well taken, is that people who are in elective positions, they do, in fact, listen to what their constituents tell them. To quote our old friend Tip O'Neill, all politics is local. And unfortunately, the people who vote, or even those who don't vote, they're still in a position where they can provide feedback to their representatives. But the thing of it is, they have to know what those representatives are doing, and you shouldn't be waiting 6 months or a year to open your mouth. Take a look, just as you said before, look at the roll calls, look at the different issues, and it's very simple. Take a look at how your representative or congressman or senator is voting on these things. And if you like it, give them that positive feedback. If you don't like it, same thing, but do it on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, and Bill references, I think, a cautionary tale there from that class where 8 letters made a difference. 8 handwritten or typed letters. And I'm told, I don't know the truth of it or what the ratios are, but the elected legislators, there's sort of a hierarchy. So if you really feel strongly about something and you sit down and take the time to put together a well-written letter and drop it in the mail, those tend to weigh more than even a phone call or the email flail that goes on. I mean, we've all probably sent emails to elected representatives, and you never know how they get sanitized or whether anybody sees them. But you know, so in the spirit of Activate Worcester, to your point as well, if you like something that was done, let them know. And maybe the best way to let them know is actually putting a stamp on something and sending it in.
If I can jump in for a moment and support what Sandy just said. Sandy knows of what he speaks because he's done this, not at the presidential level, but he's done this with Scott Brown. And he's had kind of a running dialogue with him going back almost 2 years. If there are certain votes that he doesn't like or does like, he sends Scott a letter and Scott responds. And that's a U.S. senator.
Yeah, that's important. These people want to know. We want to know. The citizens want to know. That's why your program, Activate Worcester, is so key in helping to change the way that the city works and the way that our government works. We need to have people more involved. People today don't volunteer for anything. I mean, I've been a coach, I've been a scout leader. People don't volunteer. I've had to be a coach for my daughter's softball, my son's soccer, my baseball. People don't even join things anymore. People don't join bowling leagues. The numbers of those have gone down. Many times people work so many jobs, then they come home and they're exhausted. Maybe they'll check something on email and then they'll eat something and go to bed and then get up and do the same thing over again. These are tough economic times that we're in. I think anybody who's ever lived in our lifetime, okay? I mean, nobody was around during the Great Depression, but during these times here, people are struggling. As I knock on these doors, I find people struggling with all different types of bills. One example is healthcare. Healthcare is a big issue, especially in our 14th Worcester District. The number of people who have said that, you know, they're struggling to make other bills, and then every other week they get a new bill from some type of healthcare issue, something that they hadn't planned on, that their insurance company doesn't cover. Those are the things that we need to look at and try and figure out some solutions to.
So, what about this latest bill that was passed?
I've talked to a number of business owners. They weren't happy with that.
Okay, because what I read, I'm not sure what the real value there is, putting more bureaucracy in place to what appears to be just squeeze down on the providers. They're going to leave.
Right.
And it just doesn't make sense. It seems that there's more flexible ways that things could be done.
And it really becomes another nail in the coffin of hiring people.
Well, and the folks that are having trouble finding health care will have even more as if medical providers decide that the environment here in the state isn't
Absolutely true.
what they can make a reasonable living at, as it is with both Medicare and Medicaid. Doctors are dropping out every day, and people can't find a provider. And I seem to remember reading here recently that it can take 6 or 8 weeks to get an appointment with a primary care physician, as it is.
Yeah.
If you can find one that's taking new patients.
It's like Canada. It's almost like, not for everybody, but and that's kind of what they were talking about with this Obamacare. They said, oh, we want the socialized medicine and all that. I have relatives that live up in Canada, and 2 or 3 of them came down with some type of cancer, and they kept getting put off. A year and a half later, let's say within a year, the woman, one of my cousins, she came down to New Hampshire because she lived in Quebec, and she came down to New Hampshire, and they said, geez, if you had come to us 6 or 8 months ago, we could have treated this. Instead,
now it's stage 4 or something.
She's dead. And that we don't want that here in our community. We need to sit down and look at things and try to take a different direction so that we could come up with some solutions. It's something that we need to do as a community. You need to have an advocate in the legislature who sits down with the people. People have a lot of good ideas. Let's try and come up with some solutions. It goes back to that transparency that we were talking about earlier.
Bill gets passed late at night. Nobody read the 379 pages or whatever it was.
Or the 2,700 pages of Obamacare. Well, just vote for it. Don't worry about it. Trust me. It's good. You'll like it. One of the things that I find very, very disturbing, going along with your point, which is an excellent one, about the difficulty people are having paying bills nowadays. The press, the media across the board has been very, very compliant with this. What am I talking about? When they talk about the rate of inflation, that used to be a real red flag. Oh, the inflation's up 4.2, whatever the percentage is. That used to ring true with people. Now they really don't talk about it much, and one of the reasons why is that the new math that's being practiced by Washington and implemented at the state level is what we don't include in the cost of living. A couple little items like food and gasoline, fuel, not included. Well, I filled up a little earlier today, and I paid, I think, $3.69, and that was the lowest price I could find on West Boylston Street.
Yeah. Okay,
and a lot of other places.
I'm going to make a note of that, West Boylston Street, because I'm always looking for the cheaper gas.
And this is the highest it's ever been at this time of year.
Sam's Club is cheaper.
All right, good.
Yeah, but the thing of it is, when the present administration came in, the price of gas was $1.81. Now it's more than double that, and climbing. Food, which ties right into the cost of gas, this is how food gets to the market, and so on and so forth, through the roof. And they don't allow those numbers to be incorporated. And what I find really disturbing about that, that's like saying the 3 of us have a company and we're going to go public with it, okay? except we will only show our receivables and not our payables. And boy, isn't our P&L going to look wonderful, okay?
Yeah.
We're allowing the entire political structure to walk away from these realities. And obviously, I have no idea what can be done on a totally localized basis about things like that, other than to be aware of these things and to give constant feedback to the people in Congress, to the people above that, and obviously at the state level and the district level.
The people need a voice. And that's why I'm running. There are people who are out there struggling every single day trying to pay those bills, and they're struggling. They need somebody to speak up for them. The middle class needs somebody to speak for them, to say, hey, enough with going up in these taxes, enough with going up in the income tax, the gas tax, the alcohol tax. That's our money. And especially when you have these other folks that are abusing the system. That has to stop.
One more point. I'm sorry to jump in, but because I think it's particularly relevant. Your competitor is behind the new bridge that's going to go, from across Lake Quinsigamond, from Shrewsbury, and so forth. And that's great. We need a new bridge. We don't want to have one of these things collapse, and God forbid, what that would ensue. There have been a number of pricing proposals that have been presented, and supposedly one that was like $80 million would be wonderful. Instead, this individual is championing one for $140 million.
Yeah, that's not good.
Which I don't get it, but maybe I do, because I checked something that was in the paper the other day that showed contributions to the different folks looking for work in different elective positions. And this individual had 22 separate contributions for about $8,000, all from one basic source, the unions. IBEW, SEIU, on and on and on, many, many chapters, firefighters, et cetera, et cetera. But the thing of it is, who's going to get those jobs building the bridge?
Yeah.
It's 100% of it will all be union work. And
see, that's where we need to have some change. We need some fresh faces down at Beacon Hill. We need to have some people who are not tied in with special interest. We need somebody who can speak up for the middle class.
We have to pretty much wrap this up in another minute or so. Tell the viewers, from your perspective, what should they be doing to activate Worcester from your viewpoint?
One of the things that we had mentioned earlier was that they should definitely work to try and get involved with some of the boards and commissions, join Activate Worcester, work at the polls. A number of the folks who are currently working at the polls are getting ready to retire. They've been there for a number of years, and we need some fresh people in there to come in, some new volunteers, and that would be a great way. They can work as poll workers, poll watchers, a number of different positions are open, and that's every year that they look for folks.
Great points. Bill, thrilled to have you.
Thank you.
I wish you nothing but luck in the race. It's going to be a good one right down to the end, and Worcester needs you.
Thank you.
It really needs you. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much.
Glad to have you.
Thanks.
100